thank you for joining me today. My name is Ann Crawford. I'm the Adult Services Librarian at the Ponte Vedra Beach Branch Library. And today I wanted to talk about getting ready to go back to school, because that's something just about every parent or even grandparent probably thinks about August, September, their kids going off to elementary school for the first time, middle school, high school, college. So when I was thinking about presenting this virtual program and the books and resources we have here in the library to help parents and grandparents and those who are caregivers to students, I thought, well, I've got to narrow it down, because students is a really wide range of ages and needs and all sorts of other things to cover in a short virtual program. So I decided to narrow it down to middle school, because middle school is a big transition from elementary school. It's a big step up. It's getting you ready for high school. You're changing classes, you're using lockers, you're a lot more responsible than you've ever had to be before. And as a parent myself, you're asking yourself, what can I do to help prepare my child for middle school? So if you're a parent or a grandparent or a caregiver of a sixth grader or a rising fifth grader, in my instance, where I'm already starting to think ahead about middle school, or even if you already have a student in middle school, this presentation is for you. So before we dive into our first book, I wanted to mention what I think is a really good analogy for parents and grandparents and caregivers of students and addressing their needs and helping them be academically successful, socially successful, and mentally healthy. So when you're on an airplane, if you've ever flown before, you know that before you take off on that flight, they talk about the mask falling down if, in the event that you lose pressure in the cabin, that you have an air mask where you can receive oxygen and anyone with you can receive oxygen. And one of the most important things they tell you is that if you're with a child, you must put the mask on yourself before you put a mask on a child. And as a parent, I know that feels really contrary to how you operate. Because in your mind you think, well, but I have to take care of my child before myself. You know, my child means more to me than my own life, and I can certainly relate to that. But what they're trying to express to you is that until you take care of yourself, you're not going to be in the best position to take care of your child. And that's true here with kids starting middle school. You've got to figure out, what are your thoughts about middle school? What do you remember about it? What was good about it? What was not so good about it? And that's the thing I love about middle school makeover, because it's not just talking about your child making themselves over in the form of middle school and all these new things you have to learn and all these new things you're expected to be, and how you make that transition, that transformation, that rather big step up. It's also addressing the parents and grandparents and caregivers in the sense that it's asking you to really look carefully at what your own past history is with middle school and any hang-ups you might have with it, and deal with those, and also understand what the current concerns are for middle schoolers, that they're a lot different in some ways than they were for example, my generation. Didn't grow up with the internet or, you know, cyberbullying and different things like that. You know, I had I think what they say, an analog childhood and a digital adulthood. However, there are some things that stay the same in terms of just growing up and puberty and hormones and just how the middle school mind works. And that's why this book is great, because it's addressing not just the student making a big transition and change, it's talking about the people in their life that love them and care for them also making a big step up and a change. So I love that it addresses kind of the whole picture and not just focused on the student. Okay, so now that we've addressed kind of the mental hurdles a parent, grandparent, or caregiver needs to kind of overcome about their own experiences about middle school and understanding what middle school is like for kids and teens today, and just how that middle school mind works, because it's ever mysterious, just like it was when it was my middle school mind many years ago. Now you're going to move more into the academic side of things. So middle school is a big step up because your teachers aren't going to remind you necessarily that you have projects or tests or quizzes coming up. They're going to give you what's called a syllabus that has all the due dates and deadlines, and as a parent or a grandparent or a caregiver, you too are going to want to see those syllabi, if you will, so you kind of know what's coming up, what's coming down the pike. You're not going to get an email necessarily for the teacher anymore reminding you that the project's due at the end of the week. So again, not just a transition and a step up for the student, but also for the caregiver. So I thought the next series of books I would introduce, the next kinds of books I would introduce are how can you help your student be as ready for the academic challenges as possible? In two senses. The first, help your kids with study skills. So this is crucial. So middle school is an opportunity for you to kind of revamp everything, figure out where is your student going to study and do their homework in your house. How is that time going to work? Because of course, by the time you get to middle school, you could be, knee deep in extracurricular activities, and they want to spend time with their friends, and there's just lots of things going on. So being organized is really important. And that organization does come to some degree from the parent or grandparent or caregiver kind of setting the expectation. So this is a great series, not just for study skills though, because there's also topics like help your kids with math or help your kids with science. Because even though, a parent, grandparent or caregiver may have said, well, hey, I dealt with middle school, I was in middle school, I did all that once before, it should be fine. How long has it been since you done homework or projects for middle school? And the math has changed, and the things that they're learning in school may not be the same things that you learned when you were in school. So in a way, you're kind of re-educating yourself. You're giving yourself a refresher course so that if your student at home needs support or needs help from you, you're in a better position to give it. So that's a wonderful thing about this series and books like it. You're kind of hitting the books yourself, kind of mentally preparing yourself for the kinds of things the students will be studying so you can provide assistance where it's needed. All right, parents and grandparents and caregivers. So we've talked about how you could get yourself in that mental mindset to make that transition and that step up with your student going into middle school, or in my case, a year out from middle school, or if your student is already in middle school and you just want to help them be prepared for that next grade. We've also talked about ways that you can deep dive back into the academic side of things and give yourself kind of a refresher crash course so you're ready to give any assistance or tutoring that might be needed. But of course, this presentation would be incomplete if we didn't focus on what the student himself or herself needs, because that's one of the big things about middle school is we're trying to help students, in my case in the library, in the teacher's case at the schools, be more responsible, be more active in their learning and their researching, in a sense, not only getting them ready for high school and for college, but for life in general. So one of the things we want to do at the library is make sure that we have supplementary materials that help kids learn things that they're being taught in school, maybe in a way that helps them to better understand it. Because just because a teacher explains something a certain way doesn't mean every child is going to get it right off the bat. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. So that's where these kinds of books come in handy, because sometimes they can take concepts that are a little bit trickier to digest in math or science or history and break them down in such a way that is more palatable, more understandable, so you can continue to build on your knowledge. So for example, this series, one of my favorites, it's called Big Fat Notebooks for Middle School. So it's completely geared towards middle school. This one in particular, this complete middle school study guide, is all about science. And if you've ever opened one of these books or looked at the ebook version of it, it's great because it's got lots of It's got lots of graphics and the text is really easy to read. It's very digestible. And it's one of those kinds of books that, depending on what you're studying at the time, maybe you studied something in science, no problem, but you got to another element of science and it was a little bit more complex to understand. It wasn't something you necessarily grasped right away or that your student grasped right away. These books can be really, really helpful. And there's lots of these kinds of books in the library. Danica McKellar, for those in my generation who ever watched The Wonder Years, actually made some really good math books geared at girls in middle school, which seems to be sometimes the time where math and girls start to struggle. Not always. Obviously, there were girls that I went to school with for whom math was a breeze. Math was really easy for me in in elementary school, and in middle school, it was a bit more of a struggle. So I would have benefited from those books. So that's the great thing about the library, is that we have these books both on the shelves and in many cases also in digital formats that can help students understand more about what they're learning and break down the concepts for them in a more palatable format. Okay, now for the big roundup. We've talked about books and we've talked about ebooks, both of which are available to you for free with your St. Johns County Library card, or to your student with their free St. Johns County Library card, or both, whichever one you decide. Now, the things that I'm going to talk about next are our databases. And these are sometimes something that students have a tendency to skip over. They're like, the word database just sounds really intimidating, like, whoa, I don't know if I really want to go deep dive into a database just now. But actually you really do. Because sometimes the questions you have for a report that you're writing, or for an experiment that you're doing, like for example for the science fair, or any number of other things that you might be doing for school or research, sometimes your questions don't fall within the library's hours. Maybe you have a question on a Sunday, or maybe we just closed at night and it's 10, 11 o'clock at night and you're like, oh my gosh, I need one more resource, or I need a little bit more information on something. That's where your databases are going to be your lifesaver, because your databases are available to you with your St. Johns County Library card 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can't beat that. You just can't. So, 2 databases in particular. This is not the only databases a middle school student can use by any stretch, but 2 that you really want to look out for. Brainfuse HelpNow. Now, I've talked about in some other presentations Brainfuse Job Now, which is all about helping you get a job, interview practice, all sorts of other things. Brainfuse HelpNow is all with the student in mind, and it has the most incredible features. For example, online tutoring. You need some help with math or with science or social studies or anything, you can actually connect with online tutors who will tutor you right from your own device, whether it's a desktop computer, a laptop, a tablet, your phone, whatever. So there's online tutoring. You've also got the possibilities for study aids. You can create your own flashcards. You can utilize different tools they have for different kinds of study aids that you create. And also with collaboration, you can form your own study groups online. So, the library's closed and you can't meet with your friends, or, it's a Sunday and everybody is all over the place and you don't know how you're all going to get together. You can actually form an online study group with other people that you know through this database. So Brainfuse HelpNow is incredible, and I've only touched on just the surface things that it offers, because it offers help with kids learning languages and just all sorts of other tools. You definitely need to check it out. The second database I want to mention, Gale in Context Middle School. Gale has several different databases that we own, and this one in particular is for middle school students. So if you're looking for extra sources for your research paper, or you're trying to learn more about a particular topic or anything like that, Gale in Context Middle School is definitely for you. Now I've heard some kids say, oh, no, I can't use that because that's an online source, that's an internet source, but it's not. It is on the internet. You are seeing things up on your screen, so they're virtual. However, Gale in Context pulls from physical books, magazine articles, and the like, print sources, and puts them up on your screen and then cites them at the bottom, which basically the citation would say, you got this information from this book on these pages and you accessed it via this database. So it is a print source. Now, if your teacher wants you to bring in a print source in person, or you hear as the parent or grandparent or caregiver that they have to bring in their print sources, that may be a little different. But if the point is they're not supposed to be getting their information off of Wikipedia or, some Google, search page or something like that, where, you surf onto a website and there's no way of knowing whether or not any of the information is verifiable, or if in the instance of Wikipedia, it's completely editable by anyone at any time. These are verified sources, because basically what it's doing is it's searching through, like I said, hundreds, thousands of books and magazines that we don't have the space to keep on our shelves, much less the money to buy all of these things, and it's giving this to you as resources. So if you come to the library and that really obscure person you're doing a biography report on, or doing a science fair project, and you've picked a topic that's, it's a little bit more out there than some other science fair topics, definitely try out Gale in Context Middle School to find those resources 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And again, thank you for joining me today. If you don't have your St. Johns County Library card yet, now is absolutely the time to go get one. You can get one at any one of our 6 branches. Doesn't matter which one. If you're a St. Johns County resident, you get a card for free. So it's definitely worth having the smartest card in your wallet and letting that card help you with middle school, not only just in terms of the academic side of things, but in terms of the social side of things, and again, for parents, grandparents, and caregivers to give their student the best support that they can. And I'll see you next time.